First of all, uh, with my delay in getting before the media, and then obviously front page news of me being late yesterday to my own press conference, this individual has just had enough of this business after 45 years. And Bill Feig, Bill, where are you? 45 years with the Baton Rouge Advocate. This will be his last press conference. We barely knew you. But congratulations on 45 years. Amazing. I'm sorry that we put you out that you had to retire waiting for a football coach, but good way to go off, right? Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for all your service. Secondly, anything from yesterday that I wanted to cover? A couple of things. One, I mentioned some of the analysts. A couple that I didn't get in. Antonio Fenelus is an analyst that is returning with us. Outstanding young coach that will be working with our defensive backs. And I know you probably have a release on this, but I wanted to make sure I gave him his due because really impressed with him when I got a chance to observe him and his work during the bowl game. And then we just hired Pat Hill from Nicholls State to be working as an analyst with the defensive line. So glad to have him on board as well. So just a couple of housekeeping items from yesterday relative to staff. I think the overriding theme yesterday, right, was about experience. Certainly the ability to recruit, and then certainly from my perspective, winners. You know, all part of winning programs, and that theme is going to continue to be heard today. I think you'll also see that a lot of these coaches have great ties to the state of Louisiana, in particular on this side of the ball, and to New Orleans as well, the city. So I want to begin with our offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock. You know, when we talk about experience, you know, certainly as a coordinator, unprecedented success this year at Cincinnati. You know, an offense that led in many categories, the development of a quarterback in Desmond Ridder, being one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best in the country, and what he did this year. You know, an offense that, you know, really is, from my perspective, one that is physical, which you're going to see are the tenets of the kind of offense that I want to show here at LSU. They've got to be athletic, and we've got to get the ball into playmakers. With Mike does a great job of highlighting the playmakers within the offense. But also, they've got to be disciplined and smart on offense as well. But I think it starts with that basic premise of having an offense that displays its physicality, highlights the playmakers and the athleticism on the offensive side of the ball, and then has a disciplined approach to things, and quite frankly, is a smart offense, and the way things are managed. And Mike does an incredible job of that. He's been with me before and coordinated offenses and defenses. Mike was a heck of a defensive coordinator for a very short period of time. But again, it goes to the ability to coach and teach and communicate and know the game. And Mike knows the game very well and is an outstanding recruiter. And again, I think when we talk about coordinators, it's not about what they know. It's about, you know, getting feedback. It's getting the entire staff part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And so we're not leading as much as we're helping and enabling and getting the best out of everybody on that staff, and Mike will do a great job there as well. Our associate head coach and also will be coaching with the running backs is on his second tour here, and that is Frank Wilson. You know, sometimes I'm hesitant even sometimes to bring this up because I think it marginalizes Frank in some respects. You know, a lot of people talk about Frank as a recruiter. He's much more than that. You know, recruiting is only part of this. And to be on this staff, you have to be more than just a recruiter. Is he a great recruiter? Absolutely. To be a great recruiter, you have to be great with relationships. You have to be organized. You have to be detailed. And you have to be able to follow up and close. And he certainly does that. But, you know, he's somebody that knows the game technically and tactically. He's somebody that you want to be on your staff because he's got great communication skills. He's somebody that is well respected in this community and throughout the country as a man. And I think, you know, what's important to know is he's a head coach. He knows ball on both sides of the ball, understands it, and that's important. So I want to be careful sometimes that we talk about one aspect of a coach, and certainly we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. I know I do, and I try to work on them, and we all do, but he's much more than just somebody that can recruit. That is part of what he's done, and he's done it at a high level, but he brings a great resume of experience as a coach, a teacher, a mentor to the staff. Our passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach, Cortez Hankton. And again, we all know about Frank's connection to New Orleans, where he was born and brought up. Cortez as well from New Orleans. You know, obviously the pedigree that Cortez brings is outstanding as a player and certainly an NFL player who had to make his own way. You know, he was a free agent that had to earn his stripes. Nothing was handed to him, and that's what really attracted me to Cortez. He's earned it. You know, he started as a volunteer coach, has worked his way up through the Ivy League coaching. And then obviously just this past year coming off a national championship at Georgia. I think what's even more impressive is the work that he does in the community, the work he does with young student athletes, those that are underprivileged, certainly the Cortez Hankton Family Scholarship Fund. He's other-centered. He gives back as well. And so not only do we have an outstanding coach, we have an outstanding person, somebody that's other-centered. He's got a great understanding of what we're doing in terms of developing our players on a day-to-day basis. He's seen it. He's had to do it himself. So it's just a great identification with our own players. And excited to have somebody with his skill set to, help us with what we're doing offensively as well. So extremely pleased and blessed to have Cortez with us. On the offensive line, Brad Davis returns, and couldn't be more proud to have him with us. And in particular, the work that he did in the interim in taking the LSU football team during that time in preparation for the bowl game. Short-handed, never complained about it, took it on, even though the circumstances were not the best. He looked for a positive in everything that he did on a day-to-day basis, and tried to make the best of it. And that's what you're looking for, is how do coaches handle adversity. It'd be easy to point the finger and it was somebody else's fault. That never was part of what he did on a day-to-day basis. He took on the challenge of that position and looked to make it as positive as he could on a day-to-day basis. And he's going to do the same thing and has done the same thing, and bringing our offensive line to the point where it can compete for championships. And I love that attitude about him. So it starts with his great positive attitude, and then an experienced SEC coach who's seen it, knows what it looks like, and confident that he's going to be able to develop our student athletes here to do that. He's from Baton Rouge, so three coaches right there from the state of Louisiana that are obviously passionate about what we do here at LSU, and certainly will be great contributors in everything that happens here. Joe Sloan, 9 years at Louisiana Tech, was also the recruiting coordinator, so has a great understanding of the state. Also, from an offensive perspective, has coached the wide receivers and the quarterbacks. We all know Louisiana Tech's offensive structure and system, quarterback-centered, and Joe's a bright coach that really understands what we're looking for in our quarterbacks and the ability to develop quarterbacks. And that's really what this is about. It's quarterback development. And then, again, as I mentioned, being in the state for as long as Joe has been, he's got great ties, great relationships, and understands the recruiting process throughout the state. So, when you're talking about those five guys in particular, again, as we talked about yesterday, great ties to the state of Louisiana, great experience, a great team in terms of each one of them complementing each other well, and led by an experienced offensive coordinator. Pretty exciting. And we've got a great group of experienced analysts. Trent Miles, who's a former head coach, John McDonnell, who's a veteran offensive line coach, Carter Sheridan, who returns with us, and we know about the many years that he was with the Saints and has been here. Again, another coach from the state in New Orleans. Terry Malone, who, again, spent a number of years with the Saints. He's been an offensive coordinator, has coached tight ends, offensive line, just a great deal of experience. Dean Petzing, who many of you don't know but was with me at Notre Dame, just a bright coach that brings so much to the day-to-day operations that we need at our, from a football perspective and preparation at LSU. A couple of other guys that we have mentioned that are really important to us. Our director of advanced scouting is Jim Hoffer. Jim's a former head coach at Cornell, Buffalo. He's been in the SEC. We're excited about his ability to be on our staff and use his experience from that perspective. Lester Erb was at Iowa, just recently at Rutgers. He's been in the NFL. He will be the analyst in special teams as well. So just really excited about the staff, its makeup, and then, again, as we've talked about, experience, recruiting, winning coaches, the ties to Louisiana, the commitment to pulling our base, all of those things coming together as really the most important things in terms of putting the staff together. So, as I stand here before you today, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're excited about the challenges in front of us and developing the players here at LSU, and we'll get a chance to do that for the first time when we talk about football in itself in March when we begin our spring practice. So with that, I'll open it up to some questions, and then we'll get to Coach Denbrock. Anything from yesterday that stands out other than parking news, I'll be happy to answer, and then we'll move on from there. That was a joke. God, it's a rough crowd. I'm going to have to tone it down with you. Yes.
Hey, Coach, Jacques Doucet, WAFB TV. Talking to your assistants yesterday, they all mentioned how excited they are to get on the field with the guys and start spring football and whatnot. You being a first-year head coach for the first time in a long time, how excited are you to get out there with this team and start to mold it?
Yeah, I think for me the process is about, really building the right traits with the group as we get an opportunity to be around them more and more. And whether that is actually when you put the helmets on, or whether you're having dinner with them, or you're meeting with the leadership group, or you're in the weight room with them, to me that's one of the same. There's tackling, there's route running, and all of those things that are football related that are important as well. But each one of these days is an important day. you know, and building those habits and those traits that are so necessary to be a championship football team. I'm excited as every day kind of goes by as much as I would be just waiting for spring practice to start.
There's a program in the SEC West that's recruited the offensive line at a high level, and they've been consistently successful, probably in part because of that. What have you identified in your career and now at LSU about that unit that is so pivotal to future success?
Well, you know, I have a profile in mind, and Brad and I and Mike and everybody in the offensive staff has discussed what that profile looks like. And so, you know, we're gonna recruit to that profile, and we're gonna develop to that profile. I think one of the keys to that, without getting into too much by position group, would be that offensive linemen can be developed, and it's a position that I look towards as a position of development, and that's physically as well. You don't have to come in ready-made as an offensive lineman, and maybe that's a bit of a change in a mind's eye relative to a profile.
Hey, Coach, over on this side, Steve Schneider, WAFB Baton Rouge. Now that you are introducing all the guys that you got, if you were to go back and kind of explain what your approach to putting this staff together was it relying on all your years and people you know, or were you trying to, unearth every rock and find every single person that might fit here? How much work went into this, and what was the philosophy on bringing these guys here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think each job that I've had, when you put a staff together, there's a different approach to how you assemble it. When I was at Notre Dame, for example, putting a staff together, the number one goal there was recognizing that we were going to have to go from New York to California. Academics was, obviously a prime mover in that. There were other factors. Here, going into the SEC, this isn't a place for training wheels. You got to come out and you've got to be experienced. You've got to understand what you're getting into. So I needed experience. I also needed to pull our base. And so, when we were looking at putting a staff together, it was important that we had coaches that had experience in this state and had ties, and we could pull our base. And then I think finally I pulled from my own kind of relationships that I've built over 30 plus years. I relied a little bit on some relationships that Scott Woodward has in his network and his administration at LSU. And quite frankly, my agent has a number of assistant coaches that are under his charge and, that he represents that give me that kind of Rolodex, if you will, in those three buckets.
Hey, Brian, Brody Miller with The Athletic. You've delegated play calling duties the last few years. Will that continue with Mike? And regardless, just how do you imagine your dynamic between the two?
So let's get this clear. I call all the really good plays at the outset. Delegating those responsibilities was not very difficult for me because, for my time, it was so important that I spent more time with the players on a day-to-day basis. And so if you're in meeting rooms and you're tied up most of the day, with the other things, the collateral responsibilities that fall on the head coach, it's very difficult to build the kind of relationships you want with your team. So it allows me to be in the training room. It allows me to be at meal. It allows me to do other things and build those relationships with our players. Now, look, I'm still responsible for the football. The head coach is responsible. So this is not a detachment from anything. I'll meet with our coordinators. I'll be in offensive meetings and defensive meetings. But there's a difference between full detachment and, still as the head coach, be responsible for end of game situations, timeouts, appropriateness relative to fixing things, as they go. And I'll still be involved in those things.
Yeah, Brian, right here. Ron Higgins, Tiger Details. Understanding that offenses, have, I guess, advanced the past few years. Games are, more plays are being run. It's more wide open. About how many points do you think you need to average ballpark to win conference and national championships?
Yeah, it's really a difficult question because it depends what's happening on the other side of the ball, right? If you're playing an offense that, is similar in the sense of, that they want to run the football and they want to keep it close to the vest and they want to eat up the clock and they're going to huddle, then, obviously that margin would change. If somebody is trying to push the ball vertically and run fast, then it changes the margin in the way you play. I think to be tactical and understanding the game is so important as we talk about advanced scouting, because then that's what I'll talk to my coordinators about, because at the end of the day is how do we win the game? Many times, people look at, what's your yards per game, what do you throw for, how many points do you score a game? I've always focused myself on one thing and one thing only, and that's winning. And how do you win? So I'm going to manage the game accordingly. If I feel like this is a game that we have to score a ton of points, then my defense is going to understand that too, because they need to be part of that process. If this is a game that we feel like it's going to be because of the opponent, that we're not going to need to score, a ton of points, then we'll all be in that together. And that includes special teams as well in terms of what we do. Analytics plays a role in this now. Are you going for it on fourth down? Are you punting it, to pin an opponent? Bottom line, I know this is a lot to a question, but I think for me personally, it's how you win the game more so than what the stats look like.
Is the Denbrock as a DC thing, is that a good story? Do you want to share it?
It was a great story. He was energetic. I thought he, for the most part, handled a transition when I was a young coach and I was the defensive coordinator. So think of all those guys that were former defensive coordinators that took over, and he was the first defensive coordinator. That's usually not an enviable position to be in. And we were still friends after that.
One of the things that you said that struck me when you got hired was that you thought you were analyst heavy. And to me, that's like a kid saying he's got too many toys, right? So are you in a sweet spot now? Do you feel like you have the right mix and the number that you want?
I do. And I think, what we wanted to do is, back up the positions with the experience necessary. And quite frankly, we used analysts, we've moved them into the recruiting field as well. So some of the analysts that were in football now are in the recruiting field. I think we needed to, address that in a sense of what I felt more comfortable with in moving analysts into those roles as well. Great. Yeah, I'm sorry, we got one more here. Yeah.
Yes, Shay Dixon with 24/7 Sports. Kind of a common thread in a lot of these hires is they've won or competed for championships at high school to the NFL to college, different levels. When you have that many guys who've had that sort of experience, what kind of boosts does that give a staff or staff meetings or, however you go about that?
They've been through it, so they know what standards are. So when we talk about setting our standards of expectations, they know what a high standard looks like, and they know how to demand that, but demand it in the right way. And so I think what it means is that we come at it from a same perspective, that if we see something that is not up to the standard, that we don't have to wait around for me to address it. It's already been addressed because they've been through it. They know what winning looks like. And when you know what championships look like and you know that you've been down that road before, you're not going to let those standards slip at any time. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.